The life of Geronimo. In the 1850s, Geronimo's band traveled into Old Mexico, where they could trade because a peace treaty was established. Camping outside a Mexican town, they stayed for several days. Leaving a few warriors to guard the camp, the rest of the men went into town to trade. When they were returning, they were met by several women and children, who told them that Mexican troops had attacked their camp. They returned to camp and found their guard warriors killed, and their horses' supplies and arms gone. Many of the women and children had been killed as well. Of those that lay dead were Geronimo's wife, mother, and 3 children. As a result, he hated Mexicans for the rest of his life. The Mexican Colonel Carrasco claimed this was a revenge attack for an Apache raid conducted earlier. Wild with grief, Geronimo burned his family's belongings, according to Apache tradition, before heading into the forest, where he claimed he heard a voice that told him, "No gun will ever kill you. I will take the bullets from the guns, and I will guide your arrows." Geronimo gathered a war party, and the Apaches marched to Mexico, where 8 companies of Mexican infantry met to fight them. When Geronimo saw that some of these soldiers were from the same company that participated in the massacre of his family, he got even more angry. Geronimo, being the one who had suffered the greatest loss in the massacre, was chosen to lead the Apache into battle. With Geronimo leading, the Apaches charged at an entire company of riflemen, ignoring the bullets flying around his head and charging Mexican ranks. Armed only with a hunting knife, he began slashing his enemy. They screamed and prayed to Saint Jerome to save them. He later took the death cries of his enemies. As his new name, the legend of Geronimo was born. The life of Geronimo. Geronimo was born in what is today Arizona, in the Nodoyan Canyon, near the present-day town of Clifton, Arizona, on June 16, 1829. His birth name was Coyacla, or one who yawns. He was part of the Beto K subsection, a small but mighty group. They were part of the Chiricahua band of Apaches. Geronimo had 3 brothers and 4 sisters. As a young boy, he learned to farm crops of corn, beans, squash, and peppers in the fertile, well-watered country. But early on, his fellow Bedonkees recognized that he had a gift for seeing into the future in order to interpret the present, and he was trained as a shaman, learning holy songs and prayers. By his coming of age, he showed talent for hunting, and in 1846, at 17, he was admitted to the Council of Warriors, which also allowed him to marry. At that time, the Apaches were at war with Mexicans to the south, the U.S. to the north, and the neighboring Comanche and Navajo tribes. He led for successful raids on the nearby tribes that year. Around the same time, Geronimo fell in love with a woman named Elope. The 2 married and had 3 children together. In the 1850s, the band traveled into Old Mexico, where they could trade because of a peace treaty near Cascade in Chihuahua. Mexicans attacked the Apache camp while most of the men were in town, and killed most of the ones they found in camp. Geronimo's whole family was killed. After that, he mourned. According to Apache tradition, while mourning, he heard a voice telling him no gun will ever kill him. Encouraged by this, he put on war paint and gathered warriors from his and other bands. The Apaches went on the war path. This included Geronimo's Bedonk Apaches, led by Chief Mangus Colorado, the Chocan Apaches by Chief Cochise, and the Nedni Apaches by Chief Hu. They crossed around 45 miles a day, stopping only to sleep and hunt. Reaching the settlement of Arispe, the Mexicans sent 8 companies of infantry. The Apaches won the battle, also thanks to the leadership and bravery of Geronimo. Others saw Geronimo leading the charge, only with a knife in his hands, and after the battle, they asked him to be the war leader of their people. In the next month, he led to raids on the Mexican frontier, Coming back from the second raid, they saw Mexican soldiers going north and followed them. The soldiers then proceeded to attack an Apache settlement. Their fight lasted a whole day. At the end, the soldiers decided to retreat. 8 Mexicans and 5 Apaches were killed. About the same time, the Apaches and Geronimo encountered white settlers. For the first time, the two groups couldn't speak, but communicated with gestures. Befriending each other, Apaches camped near the settlers, who were measuring land they traded, and the settlers gave the Apaches money. They didn't understand the value of this money, but later found out from the Navajos it was very valuable. Geronimo said these were good men, and they were sad to see them go when they rode out west. Geronimo dedicated his life to battling his enemies. He led many war parties and raids into Mexican territory. These small assault teams, usually ranging between 5 and 30 warriors, killed soldiers wherever they could find them, and pillaged border settlements and supply trains for weapons, guns, horses, cattle, and food. Before escaping back to Apache territory, wounded many times in battle, Geronimo taught his fellow warriors tactics of invisibility, slipping away into rocky canyons and mountains when pursued, striking quickly and from a long distance. In an event that is now known as the Bascom Affair, in February of 1861, Lieutenant George Bascom was sent to recover livestock and a young boy who had been kidnapped a while back. He was sent against Chiricahua, Apache's Geronimo's band, led by Chief Cuchas. Cuchas was held hostage, and during the negotiations, claimed his people never did such things. Cuchas escaped and both parties took hostages. All the hostages had later been killed. This started a 25-year period of bloody hostilities between the Chiricahua Apaches and the United States, and a personal 10-year war between Cochise and the U.S. Army. After this event, the native tribes of the area agreed not to be friendly toward the white settlers anymore. There was no general engagement, but a long struggle followed. Sometimes Apaches attacked the soldiers, and sometimes the army attacked the Apaches. In 1862 and 1863, Geronimo led 2 raids, where Apaches took many goods from Mexicans and repelled one counterattack. That same year, in 1863, the chief of the Mimbreno Apaches, Mangas, Colorado, went to make a peace treaty with the American settlers. He was promised blankets, flour, beef, and all manner of supplies in return for peace. And living near the fort in Apache, Tehu, traveling with 3 of his warriors. He arrived under a flag of truce, but sensing a trap sent them back to camp, and entered the American camp alone. He was later killed. The Apaches broke camp and retreated, while being attacked several times by U.S. troops. When they found out that Mangas, Colorado, had been killed, Geronimo was chosen as the new chief. At the time, the situation was bad because of U.S. Army attacks and lack of supplies, so they traveled to join Chief Victorio's Chihuahuas in Hot Springs, New Mexico. Geronimo later recalled in his autobiography that he doesn't think they ever spent a more pleasant time than upon this occasion. The 2 bands remained very close. In 1864, they returned home. The Apaches provided for the safety of their families. Before starting raids, their whole tribe would scatter and then reassemble at a camp about 40 or 50 miles from the former place. In this way, it would be hard for the Mexicans to trail them, and the warriors would know where to find their families when they return. Moreover, if any hostile native tribe should see a large number of warriors leaving, they might attack the camp, but if they found no one, their raid would fail. In the next 4 years, Geronimo led for raids into Mexico, mostly successful, taking goods and horses and killing enemies. Those who followed Geronimo credited him with a variety of supernatural powers, including the ability to heal the sick, slow time, avoid bullets, bring on rainstorms, and even witness events over great distances. One situation described by Apache Jason Batsinas. A few warriors were sitting around a campfire during a raiding expedition when Geronimo suddenly had a vision that U.S. troops had attacked their base camp. After arriving at the site several days later, they found that Geronimo's vision had been correct. The Americans had already captured the encampment. I cannot explain it to this day. Batsinas later wrote, "But I was there and I saw it." In 1872, Mexican troops attacked the Apache settlement, but the Apaches defeated them. Apache raids followed a year later. The band joined the Nedni Apaches, whose leader was Chief Hu, in the Sierra Madre Mountains in Mexico. There they had a fight with the Mexicans. About 60 Apaches faced 2 companies of Mexican cavalry and were victorious, killing all of them. Almost every year the Bedonkehi Apaches would live, sometime in Arizona and sometime in Old Mexico, where they would live with the Nedni Apaches. The leaders of the bands were close friends. Another 2 battles with the Mexicans occurred in the meantime. In the first, Apache were victorious, but suffered some casualties. In the other fight, they were forced to retreat into the mountains. After months of skirmishes in the mountains, Apaches and Mexicans decided on a peace treaty at Casas Grandes, Chihuahuas, Mexico. After terms were agreed, the trading of goods began, and the Mexicans gave mezcal to the Apaches. While they were intoxicated, they attacked and killed 20 Apaches and captured many. The Apaches were forced to retreat into the mountains, once again after the treachery. Cochise, chief of the Chiricahua Apaches, met with U.S. General Oliver Howard in an attempt to make peace. General Howard agreed to make Chiricahua's homeland as their reservation. The agency was established near Fort Bowie, and the Chiricahuas entered a period of peace. In the San Carlos Reservation, Geronimo remembered General Howard with affection, saying that all the natives respected him because he was always fair, and his purpose was always to maintain peace. On the reservation, Apaches got a good amount of food and supplies. Unfortunately, General Howard was soon transferred, and troubles on the reservation started. Geronimo and the Bedanco band moved to Hot Springs, on the Ojo Caliente Reservation, and rejoined Victorio's band of Cheyenne Apaches. This was seen as an infraction by the Americans. U.S. officials arrested Victoriano, Geronimo, and 7 other Apaches. Victoriano was released, but Geronimo was imprisoned for months because of leaving the San Carlos Reservation. Eventually, Geronimo and his band were pushed back to the San Carlos Reservation. The Ojo Caliente Reservation was then closed, and Victoria and his band were ordered to move to the San Carlos Reservation, which they refused, escaping into the night. The army was ordered to kill any Apache found outside reservations. Cheyenne Apaches were pursued across the southwest and into Mexico, fighting furiously the whole time. They numbered around 200 people and led more than 20 skirmishes. Eventually they were killed by Mexican soldiers. Victorio was said to be the last one standing. In 1883, spurred by Geronimo, hundreds of Apaches left the reservation and started traveling south. Many great warriors joined, settling in the mountain ranges of Mexico and having skirmishes with the U.S. Army on the way. The Chiricahua at this point numbered around 600. They would hide caches of food and supplies all around the southwest and parts of Mexico. The U.S. Army was also chasing the Apaches, so Americans and Mexicans made a deal to freely cross the border in order to defeat the natives. A furious battle took place south of Arizpe. The Mexican army attacked Apaches in the mountains. The battle lasted from daybreak into the night. In the midst of battle, Geronimo managed to come close to the Mexican general, who was ordering his officers to push harder. Geronimo managed to kill the Mexican general, and from then on the Apaches were encouraged, and the Mexicans didn't push as hard. When dark fell, the Apaches set the grass on fire and escaped. General George Crook was sent by the U.S. to deal with the Apaches, The natives respected him and he respected them. He was heard saying the U.S. Army has the tiger of the human species before them. Referring to the Apaches, General Crook was able to track Geronimo, and realizing he was at a huge numerical disadvantage, Geronimo decided to meet Crook. They struck a bargain that the Chiricahua Apaches would move to a new reservation called Turkey Creek. Geronimo was never happy living on a reservation, so when he heard they were planning to arrest him, he escaped again this time. Most Chiricahua Apaches remained on reservations. The remaining free Chiricahua took up hiding, once again in the Sierra Madre Mountains. Crook pursued Geronimo into Mexico again. A $25,000 bounty was placed on Geronimo's head. Fear gripped the Southwest during the final summer of Chiricahua Apache freedom. In 1886, the final free band numbered only 37 people. They included 18 warriors, 13 women, and 6 children, including 2 infants. They remained at large for 5 months, while around 5,000 soldiers of the U.S. Army, around 3,000 Mexican soldiers, and fewer than 1,000 volunteers were trying to subdue them. After General Nelson Miles replaced Crook, he decided to move all 400 Chiricahua Apaches, who had been living on the San Carlos Reservation, to a prison in Florida, knowing this would scare the free Chiricahua Apaches. Later that summer, Geronimo met with Miles, who promised Geronimo's resisting Apaches would see their families in 5 days, and that he wouldn't be arrested. Geronimo accepted the treaty and surrendered for the last time. The first group were moved to Florida, but suffering from malaria, they had been moved to Alabama. Geronimo's group had also been moved to Florida, and after 2 years of imprisonment, also moved to Alabama. The families were reunited at last. Later they were moved to Oklahoma. Geronimo toured the nation, performing for fairs and exhibitions such as the Buffalo Bill Sideshow. Geronimo's most famous public appearance came on March 4, 1905, when he took part in President Theodore Roosevelt's inaugural parade in Washington, D.C., flanked by 5 other Native leaders. In his final years, Geronimo studied Christianity throughout his life. He had 9 wives and 7 children. In 1909, Geronimo was returning from a drinking binge one night when he fell off his horse into a ditch. He stayed in the ditch until morning and contracted pneumonia. He passed away days later. Before he died, Geronimo stated that he never should have surrendered, but instead should have died fighting. The federal government wouldn't free the Chiricahua Apaches until 1913, for years after Geronimo's death. They were no longer prisoners of war. 1/3 decided to stay at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, while 2/3 moved to the Mesquite Apache Reservation in New Mexico.